Hi guys, so the plan today is to talk to you about design development through model making, and I'm going to be talking to you about how we create models to give us information that we need. I'm just going to run you very quickly through the entire project to show where we should be by now. Maybe a minute, 2 minutes, I don't want to spend too long on it, and to talk to you about the next steps, where I'm going with my project, which will hopefully guide you through what you should do for your project. Okay. Now I'm using the AQA design criteria, exam board criteria, but the design process is going to be very similar regardless of which exam board you're actually following. When you're doing this, think about where your marks will come from, how you're explaining stuff, how you're giving information that shows the examiner that you know what you're talking about and that you've considered a range of ideas. Okay, because when people are looking at it from the outside, they won't necessarily know what you're talking about. Okay, so you have to explain it. So there's the assessment criteria. We start with a mind map. That's where you analyze the various options for a design project. You try and identify a really good solution. The better the solution that you can, or the better the problem that you can come up with, the easier it is going to be to try and find solutions for it. It's more interesting to explore. And then we're onto the target market, and we identify somebody that we're going to design specifically for. This will be really hard to do it as a design project if you don't have someone you're actually able to speak to. And if you're feeling a little bit lost with it so far, it's because you haven't done step 2, which is identify a real person that you can speak to. I would suggest that you make sure that it's somebody you can either pick up a phone to, or you can actually see in person or go and visit. It makes a massive, massive difference, and it helps you to really frame your project. It's never too late to go back to a target market. If you've started this and have got a bit kind of stuck, go back to your target market. Okay, and you do a series of interviews or phone calls or user tests with those people all the way through the project. It's not just about doing a questionnaire and saying tick. It's about finding out what they really, really need and what they want. I think a really useful thing to do is to look at the context, the place where your product is used. So I'm doing an architect working from home, young person, male, reasonable amount of money with an interest in being environmentally friendly. Your target market will probably be someone very different to that, so you do your research to suit them. I've looked at that particular working from home context, laptop on the arm of a chair, not really very, very comfortable, so that's where I'm designing for. And again, if you haven't quite got that right, go back to your intended user and existing products. Okay. Existing products isn't something that you copy from, it is something that helps you come up with your own design ideas. So if you've been a bit of a copier, now's the time to adapt it. Well, saying that, mine are a little bit similar to that. And then we're on to specification. Now, I've got Access FM. There are lots of different ways of remembering how to write a specification. The really key bit is that you have a series of points that you want your product to do, to be like, and to function as, so that you can tick those off as you go through the project, and you can say that's worked, or that needs improvement, or no, I haven't met that criteria, because you need to judge your own success in the design process. Okay. Now you can change your design specification based on research in the same way as you can change your designs. It's only really when you come to your manufacturing specification that you kind of need to fix it a little bit. Then on to design sheets. Now, to be a bit self-critical, these do not contain enough notes for an examiner, so don't look at those and go, those notes don't matter. I'm going to do a whole video about notes and evaluation later on. So I came up with 3 different initial ideas sheets so that I had 9 different ideas to evaluate, and I was then able to use this evaluation chart against my specification points. They're the points that I'd come up with 4 slides ago. And each of those 9 designs is then given a red, amber or green. You can do it with a star profile. You can do it just by writing notes. And again, what I'm missing here is what I'm now going to do to improve my designs and what I'm going to do next. Okay, then we've got the improved idea based on evaluation. That's kind of where I'm going now. And you'll see it's out of order because I'm doing models, and then I'm going to come back to this maybe later on. Okay. Then we were on to model making. Now remember, I told you that models were important to come up with ideas, to explore them, to think about what you're doing. I've got my models on the desk in front of me here. But I also think they're really good. If you're not a great drawer or you're not very confident with drawing, remember you can use them to trace from. Okay, so they're a really good way of using as underlays, take the photographs, adapt it, add extra features to it. I said that in the previous video. Okay, and now we're on to today's video. I'm going to show you, I've produced a model which is it's beautiful. I'll show you. It's gorgeous. Right, here's my gorgeous model. I know, right? It's the latest thing in design and technology, but you all wish you could make one of those. This is based upon this idea. Okay, so that model there, where we had two pieces that folded out or pulled out to extend the working surface. What I've done is I've gone, okay, when I was looking at that design, and it occurred to me that it didn't need to come out in two directions because of where it was going to be used on the sofa. So it only comes out, although I was designing this model so it could move in two directions, it's not coming out in both at the same time, which this original model was. Okay, because I thought, well, maybe there's some mileage in having that range of movement. I also think that I liked the model that I've got here that rotated. So the rotatability of that I thought was quite nice. And on this one I quite like the drawers. So I'm not saying that what I've done today necessarily brings all those three together exactly, but what it does do is it has drawers that pull in and out. It's designed so that for me that can rotate on the sofa or on the arm of the sofa, and also I've made this to size. This was all about going, how big does it need to be? Okay, I didn't really use a huge amount of measurement when I was making that, apart from to make sure that this one went inside that one. When I was doing it, I thought it was quite interesting that maybe the interior one had some opening drawers on it, or lids, or sections. I haven't put those on the model because that isn't what I'm doing today. I did want to look at if it folded out that way, whether or not it could take a drawing surface and a laptop, in this case a Microsoft Surface, on it. It did fit on the arm of the chair, and I do think there's some sort of clamping mechanism that I can do there, but I haven't come up with that yet. But what I can do now is I can say, without too much of a shadow of a doubt, that I've got my size about right. It's probably a little bit thick. I know it can rotate on the arm of the chair if I want it to, and I know that that space will pull out far enough for a laptop to sit on. And then there's drawers and stuff that colouring pencils can fit into. So I've got lots of decisions made by making this really horrible model. It was actually quite tricky to do. I reckon that model took me about an hour, with various pairs of scissors and stuff to nibble away at it, and I've put a bit of white wood glue on it and some masking tape. I put some bits of cardboard on the bottom to kind of stiffen it up because it was getting a bit bendy. It wasn't a beautiful process watching me do that, but I can measure from it, and I can get my ruler, and I can actually do that very deliberately if I need to. Okay, so this is the starting point for what I'm about to do, and I'm going to do some design development drawing, and this is where you need to get to really. Whether you make a big model, I think you should, or whether you make a scale model, the next stage is to take our design drawings that we produced previously and create almost a final design. We're not at a final design stage, but we need to go, okay, I know what that looks like, I know how that works. I'm going to now go, how could I get it so that somebody else could make that product? That's the question. How would somebody else make that product? All right. So realistically, I'm looking at this design here. I'm not going to worry about this stand at the moment. I'm going to look at this quite simply. Now, I'm doing this project thinking about year 10s. So I'm assuming that you have a certain amount of knowledge, but you don't necessarily have all the knowledge you might need. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information about the materials I'm going to work with. When I'm drawing today, I'm going to work with either 9mm, 12mm or 18mm plywood. Those are standard thicknesses. If I work at 9mm, or I could potentially go 6mm, if I worked at 6mm or 9mm, it gets quite thin. And so it's hard to cut a joint into it or to put a screw into it. If I go with the 18mm, it gets really heavy. So although I can cut a joint into it, it becomes really challenging to use. Big, difficult object. So for me, I'm probably going to work with 12mm ply for my main carcass, the main outside bit. Which means already, if I have a top and a bottom, I've got 24mm. Now 24mm is pretty much an inch. I don't know why I'm converting it to an inch. But you know, that's a pretty substantial amount of wood. So could I go from 12 down to 9? I don't think so, whilst keeping my construction solid. But the inside one, maybe, because it's under less pressure, I can use 9mm. So when I'm thinking about my object, I'm going to think in those terms, 12mm and 9mm. Right? Everything is multiples of that. The reason that standard boards are like that is because of the number of layers in plywood. So it's kind of become a bit of a standard. You know, you need an odd number of layers in order to give it its strength. That's one of the reasons why those boards have come out at that kind of size as a standard. And then companies have just gone right, and construction and manufacturing have said, right, let's standardize these products. So was it 1220 by 2440 is the board size, by 8mm, 9mm, 12mm, sorry, 8mm? By 9mm, by 12mm, by 18mm. So multiples of sort of 3s and 6s. Anyway, so I'm going to do some drawing. I will speed it up, and then I'll stop when I'm doing anything appropriate. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the sort of side of the object. I'm not going to draw the stand and how it fits together, and I'm going to look at those pieces because I'm working out now how this product fits together. I think in the PowerPoint that I've shown you, let's just see if I can find it, I have a development sheet from another project where I show sizes and parts fitting together, and that video is on YouTube if you wanted to find that design development. So I'm going to kind of create a sheet a little bit like this one today. I reckon that's an hour's worth of work looking at construction. So that'll be an hour. I'll condense it super fast. But I'm going to do some drawing based on those sizes. And as I'm doing it, I'm going to make decisions. I'm going to think about it. I don't have the answers. I'm going into a blank page with my model, with my models, with my initial sketches. But the rest of this, I'm thinking about my materials and my construction method. Okay, I'm thinking about my joining techniques, and I'm thinking about how strong this object is to make it durable. Okay. Again, I'm not going to write enough notes on this. When you're doing yours, you have to think, what am I trying to explain? I'm kind of yapping at you about it, so you know what I'm talking about. You need to put that all on your paper, and I will do another video another time about measurement. Right, so I'm going to talk to you for a minute. I don't know if you can see this bit of the... Well, no, you can. What I've drawn there is each of my components, and I'm using a lap joint. So a lap joint is one where one piece has that rebate cut into it. Americans call these rabbets. And then it has another piece that sits up against it. Okay, now these are classic design and technology workshop joints. And then they're either pinned or glued and screwed or just glued. And the benefit, remember, of a wood joint is it keeps things from twisting and rotating. But this one doesn't offer huge amounts of strength. But for what I'm doing, it's fine. And I might reinforce it with a screw, probably in a couple of points. PVA glue. So I'm showing my different parts. Now, because I've drawn that as a layout like that, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use these hatched lines to indicate that I've kind of cut through. And these are at 45 degrees. Now, I'm doing parts at the same angle. and then other parts which are similar at the same angle. Okay. Now again, I'm sketching this. If I was doing this really neatly, I would do that with much more care to make sure that my angles were 45 and spaced evenly, but I'm not going to spend weeks doing this. Okay, so I can now see, you're a bit far away, I can now see how my different parts interrelate. This is quite a useful sketch as well. I'm going to just 3D that a little bit. Gives a bit of information. I'm going to just pause here for a minute and talk to you because as I'm doing that, God, makes my hands hurt. I haven't done enough drawing recently. I'm doing it in pencil and then I'm going over with ink because I think it just gives me a little bit more confidence about what I'm drawing. You might have seen as I was doing that I was struggling with working out where this part went. This isn't a presentation drawing as such, so I'm not going to scrunch it up and do it again. But this might be the sort of area where you go, actually, do you know what, I'm going to use an underlay. So maybe you would take this drawing here, trace it off, and then use that to create some of those parts. There is a video that I've done somewhere else on YouTube about doing an exploded drawing from a block. If you're a bit stuck on it, it might be worth having a go at that. What I'm basically doing is taking a cube centre and then projecting further out. Now I'm not actually, if I put my perspective ruler against that, these aren't in any real perspective or oblique or isometric, but they're an approximation communicating those design ideas. The other thing that I did, the reason that I stopped, is I hadn't thought about until just then how this drawer actually sits within that chamber. And I'm going to put some little drawer runners on it. Now, hundreds of different ways that I could do it. I did think about maybe putting some sort of nylon-y friction or low friction bearings runners at the bottom. I think there's probably some sort of stop that I'm going to have to think about at that point at the bottom to stop the drawer from coming all the way out. So I'll do a little bit further investigation on that. But what I am showing here is that at this point I'm showing that that is a lap joint. But I'm incorrect, aren't I? Because that should be a butt joint. So I'm going to take that arrow and bash it up to there. And then I'm going to show a butt joint for this, because that part of the drawing is a butt joint. Now, I mean, that illustrates, that was a conversation between me and me, wasn't it? But if someone said, hang on a minute, you're saying that should be a lap joint, but you've shown it as a butt joint. It's an opportunity to check your manufacturing details. So I'm going to make sure that that is correct in a minute. And that indicates that joint there. And I'll do a butt joint enlargement at that point there. I'm not putting any colour on these. You could put some colour on them if you wanted to. There's no reason not to. I'm just being reasonably quick with it. And I'm going to show some overall sizes. Now again, this is 30 minutes of recording time so far, and I don't want to spend 30 minutes of your time watching me. So this is the moment where you kind of go, okay, I'm going to describe how this works. The only thing that I think maybe I would show as another enlargement would be if I was doing this lap joint again here. but I was going to put a screw into it, particularly if I was going to put like a countersunk screw into it, I might do an even larger enlargement showing how that screw sits inside those bits of timber. Now I'm going to draw that just as a sort of diagrammatic version. Okay, so that's not an orthographic technical drawing of a screw there, but what it does do is it indicates that there's a screw that maybe sits within a pilot hole. I don't know, but that shows some of the additional construction methods. Okay, now this is still a development sheet, so you work it out as you go along, and you might have a pretty clear idea, or you might come up with different construction techniques as you go. But if you were to look, if you're stuck, if you kind of go, I don't know how that fits together, go and find something. Go and have a look at your dining room table and look for a mortise and tenon joint, or go and have a look at your shelving in your bedroom and see how a bit slots into a rack and use that. So in your own designs and in your own drawings here, don't be afraid of taking your model, taking your sketching on top of your photograph of your model, or using things that are in existence to help you do these drawings. I'm okay at drawing. You might struggle with it a little bit, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it or have a go at it. Maybe go more 2D than 3D. Maybe put more notes or more enlarged views. But what you have to think is, can the 3D final design, the development drawing of the construction, and a technical drawing, does that allow somebody else to make this product? Okay, so this is the next task. I'll finish this sheet at some point and pop it into either this video or the next video. But this is about construction detail. How would you make it? If someone said to you, go on, head off into the workshop, I'll give you £1,000, don't come out until it's finished, you would find a way of making it. So that's what I'm asking you to do. That's your design challenge. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to stop it at that point and leave it up to you. You do your best version now. Communicate information about your design. I've put a little bit of a background on there. I've talked to you before about putting they call them vignettes. It just helps to lift things off the page a little bit. Some people would argue it makes the page look cluttered. This is not a technical drawing. It's not an orthographic drawing, so I can kind of get away with a little bit of creative license there. If you were observing me drawing a little bit, you'll have noticed that I quite often go over things a couple of times. I find it gets my head into the right space to be producing the artwork and to be thinking about the design as I go over things. Sometimes I'll work things 3 or 4 times whilst I'm thinking about how it might work or operate in real life. Now, this is not a finished product, but I could certainly go into the workshop and I could make that. I could even make a really clear model for it. I think my next step has to be CAD. I think I have to go into computer-aided design because there are things about it that I'm not sure about. I'm not sure about these draw runners. I don't really like that. It's not a very clever solution. it might not need it as well. I'm not sure about. I think it needs a pivot, and of course the other thing that I haven't even pretended to do on this is to think about how it locks onto the side of the sofa. Okay, but I don't want this to be a project that goes on forever and ever, because we have to draw it to a close. This is very, very boxy. It's not very good design. It's not really solving a massive problem. Actually, it does solve quite a nice problem, but I would maybe, if I was pushing this to a further GCSE level, if this was a major project, if I was going to an A-level project, I would be looking at alternative materials and really making it a slick product. This is not going beyond a certain level at the moment. So when you're doing yours, look at other products and see how much better they are, because this isn't the best thing. This is a box in a box. I mean, I've designed a matchbox here, haven't I? Think about how things fit together. This is about demonstrating your understanding of materials and processes. Maybe I go, how could I make that flat packed? How could I, asking questions, thinking about what about alternative materials? How can I reduce the weight? How could I make that more appropriate for someone who maybe hasn't got full use of their hands to use? How could I join it so that it can be repaired and increase its lifespan? How can I make it so it's customizable so that people with particular requirements can maybe make it easier to put things down in the same place so they can find them if someone who's maybe is visually impaired, or how can it help someone know when to have a business appointment because maybe there's some sort of vibration device on there that tells them that something's happening. So you can take your product at this point and adapt it and develop it and improve it, thinking about intended users. But obviously you've got to meet the needs of the person that you're designing for. If you're designing for a particular target market, hit those people, get it right for them. And I could take that to someone and say, what do you think? Is that important? Should I leave that out? Is that detail something that you need to have in there? And my intended user could say, actually, that doesn't fulfill the function for me. You need to do more. I've been doing this for 51 minutes today. I think this is an hour-long task for you guys, if not more. Look at my design sheet. It's got lots of different drawings on it. It isn't fully finished. I would expect maybe 2 or 3 of those if I really, really pushed it. Don't limit yourself on this. And let's see what we can do. So this is about, could somebody make it? Could your intended user understand it? Are you communicating the right information so that you can improve your designs further? Okay, good luck with that. It's quite a challenging task.